G'day, it's Chris. Welcome back to Flat Tank Journey and welcome to my shed. It's been a good week. It's the end of the week and I'm tidying up because I've got an absolute tip site in here. You would think something had exploded. There's wood, there's metal, there's a bit of blood. Cut myself a couple of times this week and a whole other range of things that I need to tidy up. Video this week is a composite of, I don't know, 3 or 4 days work where I got stuck into small tasks. Stuff went to the powder coater, off to buy bearings, a little bit of the tank, a little bit of guards, a little bit of paint, a little bit of a few things. Hope you enjoy. Cheers. Best get on now and get all this stuff for powder coating. It's midweek, it's Wednesday today, and I worked a couple of days and I haven't been able to get to the powder coaters. So this is going to slow things down a little bit. These are the parts I want to take. I've taped up some of the threads, but the guys I use are pretty good and I'm going to get them to protect the bearing surfaces from the headstock and not much else. Like all these things with powder, got to get a drill and just relieve the holes a little bit. Other than that, everything looks all right. Oh, this piece, want the bearing surface protected, and I want the inside of this protected. So they'll do a good job. It'll be fine. I'm trying to stagger all my jobs when I go out so I can get most things done at once. I've got the bars off being welded and they'll be ready later this week, I hope. I'd need to get some bearings because I'm still flabbergasted that the bearings that was done. I was going to say the bearings in the headstock, but there wasn't any. Now, it's actually really difficult for me to get what's right. I've got 1/4 inch, but when you put them on the bike, the whole piece sits up too high. So I'm going to guess 3/16. I've got a 3/16 ball bearing and it fits really nicely into the groove on this piece and on the headstock and leaves a little gap to snug down, and so you can't see a gap in between. So I'm going to need some bearings while I'm out too. Of course, you know, you have plenty of 1/4 inch, but you don't have enough 3/16, which is pretty typical. So I think I've got about 10 or 12 in there, and I probably need closer to 50 for the top and the bottom. So I'm going to get those while I'm out too. I'll be back. Thought I'd add a little bit of black enamel to a few parts, just while I could. They were clean. That's the brake plate and the brake arm. And then down here on the anvil, I've got part of the rear stand clip that I had to respray because the paint peeled. Why did the paint peel? It peeled because I waited too long before I put another coat on, but not long enough to put another coat on, and then it blistered. In an effort to move on a bit, I put the guards off the Velo into primer and then primer putty. And then I've had them sitting inside for about 5 or 6 days. Just not in front of the heater, but sitting near the heater. On the floor, standing up, just hardening completely. It's been a problem of mine in the past that I have not allowed filler and putties and things to harden properly. Now it's actually May here now, and of course it's just getting cooler. I live in the southern states, and even on a nice day it's still cool, so you got to be a bit careful. And you saw the failure I had, or you're about to see the failure I had with a rear stand clip, and the paint just peels, blisters, and it's from not giving it enough time to dry. Now this is just a bit of 320. I followed the instructions on the primer putty very closely. Again, I've had failures because I think I know something and I don't. And I got 3 really good coats on it. as I say, 5 or 6 days ago. Now, I'm just going to sand this or block this back, whatever you want to call it, with 320, and then I'm going to enamel, black enamel them. I was at the hardware store and I bought some clean white rags in a bag. Yes, it's expensive way to get cleaning cloths, but they're very, very clean. And I find them very, very disposable, and it works well for me. Right here, rear guard, then we can move on, throw a bit of paint at it. There we go. They've sanded off really well. I haven't been concerned about the inside. I have little regard for what they look like underneath. I don't need them to be like glass underneath. I just don't. Not interested. Going to find some wax and grease remover and another cloth and give these their first wipe with that. Clean cloth, and that's the advantage of having the white cloths all in a bag, and they come in this little bale. Are a bit pricey, but they're okay. You're never tempted to use a dirty one. And cleanliness is, I don't know, next to godliness they say, but you know, cleanliness is one of my failings when I paint. I don't keep things clean enough. Now this won't be the final wipe it gets, just gets me off the bench. I will wipe them again, and probably with another clean cloth when I hang them up, because I'm going to hang them up to spray them, so that I'm not tempted to touch them, because I do that too. Now, I should have cleaned off the texture on the inside. I thought the primer would cover it, but it didn't. And so I've actually got texture mark on the inside. I can live with it. It'll be right. They look super. I'm going to move my wife's car, and then I'm going to get ready to spray. I'm just trying to get my greasy fingerprints off this thing in most of it. I don't think you can get your greasy fingerprints off everything unless you're using gloves, and I'm not. But I want it off the surface of it. So I generally just touch the funny blue mark, the bracket or the inside, because I can live with a funny mark on the inside, because who's going to see it besides you and me? No one. But I don't really want funny marks on the outside. Now there's a little breeze blowing, so that's not a bad thing. I've thrown a cover over the ruddy and part of a cover over the BSA. Rightio. Little cover over a few things. Very, very, very light breeze, which is nice. And I'm going to give this can a good shake. Now this is Metal Pro Quick Dry, durable enamel, anti-corrosive interior and exterior and metals and, I don't know, goes over everything. I'm going to try and spray the inside first. Looks okay. Not trying to get a wet coat, I'm trying to get a dusting on this. Now I know I shouldn't touch it. Again, just dusting over the paint, not too fussy. I suppose I am fussy. I'm not trying to cover it at this stage. I'm paying attention to the edges, the brackets, around the edges of the brackets and around the edges of the guards, and trying to mist the guard so we get some adhesion. I'm not a great painter. I wouldn't call that a wet coat, but it's a cover coat. And I've tried to get cover on everything, and that's a second coat. There's a third to come where I'm going to concentrate on the edges and trying to get a good coat. It looks good, looks really sharp. just trying to spray the ends of the guards where the cut is, because that's one of the points I miss with some regularity. I've also tried to spray into where the bracket is, because that's really easy to miss. Hindsight, I should have painted these brackets black before I put them on, and then I could have given them a scuff and painted them again, but I didn't. You missed the final coat on the rear guard because I was overexcited and didn't turn the camera back on. There we go, that can is all but done. It's done the brake plate, the brake arm, part of the rear stand clip and those two guards. Just about done. Be all right for dusting over something else. Now, don't touch them, let them dry. Don't know that this is going to do a lot for you, but you know, you're going to see, I had a pretty glassy finish there. And you know, for a big guy with a rattle can in a dusty shed in downtown Colac, I'm not unhappy. Actually, I'm really happy. It's all right. It looks good to me. Pleased with that. Now, let it dry. So if you follow me on Instagram or Facebook, and Facebook seems to be the popular thing for people of a certain age like me, Instagram's for the young people. I've been working on the tank. Now, it had a mountain of filler on it. It still does. Now, I have sanded this side extensively, and I've still got a thick coat of filler. I actually got to the point where I thought, nah, that's enough. The top wasn't too bad. I actually ground some filler away. I wanted to see what was there. Now, in places, it was thick, maybe 2 or 3 mil. This side, I reckon the filler was 4 or 5 mil thick in places. Now, I've got it to a flattish surface. I've got high spots, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So between those is low spots. And I'm not going to rip the filler out of it. I will have to fill some of these. But there's a dent here, nasty one. Maybe that's 2 or 3 mil deep. The filler is solid though, and it looks okay. I gave the bottom a mask up and a paint. I'm not going there. I'm just not. I'm not hacking into that bottom because I've been down that rabbit hole before and it's ugly. It's ugly. I cleaned out the thread. This is 3/8 cycle thread. I thought it would be 1/4 inch BSP, but it's just not. I want it to be because it'll be easier, but it's just not. I am actually considering, because 1/4 inch BSP is just a little bit bigger, I think, just tapping that out and making a clean hole to get a fuel tap in. But in the meantime, I've got a liner kit coming that I hope will make it. If it doesn't, you see this bit and not the next bit. The other thing I noticed about the fuel tank was that, if you remember on the torpedo, I had the 2 Reading standard reproduction caps. And what had come with the torpedo was actually 2 remade caps with brass, made from brass Welsh plugs. And they screwed back onto the filler necks that I had. Now, in the most bizarre world yet again, the cap that's been remade by Mikey in Queensland, who sent me the torpedo, is a better fit on the Velocette tank than the cap that was with it. So I don't know what I'll use, but that's a really good looking little cap. It screws on really, really cleanly. I think I'll get them nickel plated when I go back to the nickel plater, because I actually think that's a better looking cap than the one that was on it. We'll see. Here's the caps, and yes, it's a shame to break up a pair, but I'm not sure this is original to the bike anyway. It just doesn't fit quite right. What I do notice straight away is, though, the remade cap is deeper by quite a bit, which really gives that screw onto the filler neck a much better chance. And you can see that it goes all the way to the bottom of the threads. Now, we need a cork gasket inside here, and we need a hole. Because if you don't have a hole, it will starve itself of fuel. And off it comes. So a much better result out of these two little caps than there is out of the cap that I've got with it. Lucky I keep everything. That's me trying to weld nuts onto bolts or shafts and turning them into bolts. These are now the bolts that go through to hold the footrest, engine, those plates that were a bit ugly because there was too many nuts and bolts. A little bit of porosity in my weld, but I'm using gasless and yeah, I don't really like it, and I'm not good at it, but I don't care. It'll be fine. It's the head of a bolt. It's going to be okay. I'm going to finish the rest of these up, and that'll be cool. I've got one of those chucked up. I should have said I don't weld really well, and one of the reasons is that I don't see really well when I'm welding. I don't know why, but I have trouble seeing. So quite often I stray off the path where I'm meant to be. I can live with it though, especially for jobs like this. Not life-threatening. A little bit more. That's why you always be careful with the chuck key. Because when I dropped it, oh, that's a bit rough. That's a bit rough. That'll need a bit of a sand up. I don't want to cut too much more off that. I did recess the bolt into the nut and plug weld it a bit, but I don't want to cut too much more off or I'll cut the weld off. I'll give that a polish. It'll look good. There they are. That's those bolts off the footrest bracket, engine bracket, done. I have scaled that down. This one's a bit ratty. I can live with it. It'll be fine. Some of them are better than others. I'm just polishing the heads a little bit. I'm gonna probably paint them. or at least paint one side, maybe against my better judgment because paint comes off, but I want them to disappear. I want them to be not so obvious. They were incredibly obvious and I didn't necessarily like the way they looked. The welding on some of them is really good and on a couple is not so good, but I think they're all going to hold. I do like to get most of the score marks out of the heads. I don't know why, I just do. And then I'll get them back together. Now, there's no doubt the most satisfying bit of the week was putting the black paint on the guards. They turned out, in my opinion, really super. I'm very, very pleased with how they look, especially if I can get this rear stand clip on without damaging the paint. Just getting everything to line up without forcing it is the key to it. There it goes. Cool. The guards painted up really well. Now, I'm a bit of a rattle can king. I readily confess to that. I like them. You know, they work for me. It just works. I'm not really sure why, but I find it incredibly easy. I find the finish incredibly good for the standard I'm trying to achieve. I find the finish incredibly good. I'm just going to grab a little spanner and just nip those up a bit. I should have got better organised, shouldn't I? That's probably going to do for now. Now, I painted these about, well, let's go back. I primed these about a week ago. Etch primed about 8 days ago, then primer puttied, left them for about 5 days, 4 days. Actually, the second, third and fourth day, I took them inside the house, put them near the wood heater, not too close, but enough to keep warm. My shed's quite cool in the autumn, and it's autumn now, and let the primer truly harden much better than perhaps I have in the past. I then, sanded and painted, and now they've been hanging for 2 days in the shed, and that's really cool, and I feel confident enough now to touch them, and I'm going to bring them into the house to harden completely. But I wanted to put the stand clip on, mainly for me and to show you, and I don't know, bask in the glory of it. It's a pretty good result. Now, by no means are these perfect. They're just not. But heavens, for a guy in his shed, just with a rattle can that he bought at the hardware store, they look pretty good. Now, there's a couple little dents here where that mounts to the front of the girder fork. Never be seen. Don't lose sleep. But they look pretty good. Here's the rear one. The rear one is equally as nice. Or I think it is. I think the finish is really smart. It's a tiny little mark there when you get it in the right light. Whoops, nearly made a mess of it. And there's the rest of it. It looks really, really good. Just rattle can. Gonna put it down before I make a mess. And here's the brake plate. I had the brake plate out, it was cleaned, it had been wire brushed, and the brake arms, so they got hit at the same time. I didn't need to, but I did because it was easy to do, and they're done now and they can go back onto the wheel. But overall, looks great. That's it. That's my journey for the week. Flat tank journey's been a lot of fun this week. Actually got 3 days on and off of work done, and I'll have to get in and edit this footage, but everything's gone reasonably smoothly. The guards are triumph. I really like them. I hope you do too. I hope you think they're super. Get in touch if you do. If you don't, probably don't get in touch. I don't want to hear about it. Everything else has gone okay. Where am I at? The bars are off getting welded. The rest of the bike's at the powder coaters, and I've drawn a blank. The engine is probably okay, but the gearbox is not okay, and I need a gearbox. It's probably that simple. It's probably easier for me to get a whole gearbox that is in reasonable condition from someone, and probably a whole clutch. So if you've got a whole gearbox or a clutch, get in touch, because I don't. And my part search is fruitless. But anyway, it's all good. As I said, that's my journey. If you like what you've seen, get in touch, say g'day, and click the subscribe button. Cheers.